This is a Six News podcast. This is Newswire with Austin Pollock.
Welcome back, everybody. Welcome to episode 4 of the Newswire. I'm Austin Pollock. Thank you very much for joining me. It is great to have your company wherever and however and whenever you might be listening to us. Don't forget, you can catch up on demand or tune into our previous episodes. Just go to our YouTube channel. We're on there. Apple Podcasts, we're on there. Spotify, we're on there. You're on our iHeartRadio as well. We're on all these podcasting platforms. You can head to SIXNewsAU.com/podcasts if you can't find it as well. Hey, thanks a lot for joining us. We have a fantastic episode that we're going to get through. Helen Berents is a senior lecturer and political researcher at Griffith University. She's been kind enough to join us here on the Newswire. She chats about the UK. They've allowed under 16s to vote in their general elections. So everyone from 16 and up is allowed to have their say. Now, being 16, I think this is a pretty good idea. We have a quick discussion about it, and we also find out, could it happen here in Australia? Is it likely to, we've followed a lot of the things that the UK have done, especially in our earlier government history back in the 1900s. Could we see it here again? Could we see it here? We find out. We speak to Helen Berents. That's coming up on the Newswire. We also have a chat to our 6 News North American correspondent, Wyatt Sharpe. He takes us through all the details. Trump has flown over to Scotland. He's opened a new golf course there. What it all means, what's he doing there, and I mean, from a diplomatic perspective, he's met with Keir Starmer, the UK Prime Minister over there. We find out how that's gone down. We also find out the biggest story to come out of Canada for a long time. Katy Perry and Justin Trudeau, the new power couple. What's on with that? We find out from our North American correspondent, Wyatt Sharpe. This is the Newswire, episode 4. Let's get into it. Bye, Miss American Pie. Wyatt Sharpe, 6 News North American correspondent, has been kind enough to join me he's in Canada at the moment, and it's 4 a.m. there. Wyatt, first question, what the hell are you doing up at 4 a.m.?
A combination of going to the airport and just being a crazy teenager on summer vacation, I guess, who doesn't have as many commitments as he would during the school year.
Yeah, that checks out. That checks out. Where are you off to?
I'm going to South Carolina.
Very nice. All right, we'll jump right into it. I won't keep you up because I know you got to get to the airport. Trump's been in Scotland. How's that gone down? What's he there for?
Yeah, so it's been pretty interesting. There's been a number of different kind of things that he's been doing when he's there. The big one was, of course, the opening of his new 18-hole golf course, which is interesting because usually a world leader going to a place like Scotland, they're going there for diplomatic reasons, whereas he's kind of figured out a way to almost transition this into some type of a diplomatic visit as well, just with respect to the amount of coverage that it's gotten. And, the press in the United States has really tried to make it out as if he was going on any other foreign trip. There was like a formal ribbon cutting ceremony that was there. He had bagpipers, there was fireworks, and then he also had a round of golf with family members and, various professional golfers who were there as well. Yeah. Ironically, there was a clip that was posted to social media that one of the people who was there was recording, where it essentially caught Donald Trump and some of the people around him help him cheat at the round, which was something that was quite funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, when he's there, he's also kind of turning it into a diplomatic visit as well. Like, he is meeting with a number of different heads of state and various officials from various countries when he's there. So again, the kind of private visit, if you will, that it started as kind of quickly shifted into an actual diplomatic visit. He had meetings with the president of the European Commission. He met with the British Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, of course, and then he also met with the Scotland First Minister, John Sweeney, as well.
Yeah, where money's no object, right? Just casually going over, opening your golf club, Trump Golf Club. And
pretty
my
much,
God,
yeah.
I'll show the video now for our viewers who are watching on YouTube. If you haven't, search it up. Just search Trump cheating golf. It's not very subtle. I mean, you can just see him. He just, plonks the ball behind him. I mean, come on. If you're Donald Trump, at least get some good cheaters.
Yeah, I mean, as if he's not the president of the United States, who has like pool video cameras on him all the time.
What did he expect was going to happen?
I don't know. Must have. Yeah, I don't know. Crazy.
How is the relationship between the UK and the US at the moment?
I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I would say the relationship, not even just with the UK, but if you look to like a country like Canada,
Mm,
where I'm from, a bunch of countries that historically have been allied with the United States. I mean, Donald Trump is making them look like a little bit of an adversary as of lately. You
yeah.
actually saw Keir Starmer and Donald Trump holding a bilateral meeting with one another. And it was interesting because Donald Trump took the opportunity to go after the mayor of London. And of course, Keir Starmer interrupted him kind of talking badly about the mayor of London there by saying, he's a good friend, he's someone who I respect. And so the two went back and forth for a little bit. Donald Trump, though, has been decently complimentary, as far as Donald Trump standards
Yeah.
go, towards Keir Starmer. He has come out and said, he's a little bit more liberal than I am. He was actually asked as well with respect to Nigel Farage, because he is, of course, a conservative politician in the UK who is also closely aligned with Donald Trump. And Donald
Yes.
Trump basically said, look, I like both of these two people. I'm happy to work with anybody, whether it's in the
Mm,
UK or any other country, as long as they're willing to work collaboratively. I don't care whether they're liberal or they're conservative, just whoever is
yeah.
the best kind of negotiator and diplomat, so to speak, to work with.
Yeah. Hey, Katy Perry and Justin Trudeau. Yes, a hot new bombshell has entered the villa. Let's play it.
This week, a hot new bombshell enters the villa. Don't call me up.
That's right, it's the hot new season of Love Island. Katy Perry and Justin Trudeau. I hope I've said that right, but your former Prime Minister is out on dates with American pop legends. What's going on here, Wyatt?
I mean, it's certainly gotten a lot more attention than any other political news story, which is ironic. But I was sitting in a meeting today, and then the headline came in. It came in around noon our time, and everyone was just like wondering what in the world was going on. Justin Trudeau was not known for pursuing kind of more steps in his love life. He separated with his longtime partner, who is a former television host in Canada, Sophie Gregoire Trudeau. Of course, Katy Perry separated with Orlando Bloom just a month ago. So I guess there's two sides of this. Some people are trying to say, like, oh, they're not really a romantic item. They're just having dinner together. My response to that would probably be, I don't really know, or I don't really see another angle to look at this, because they didn't just have dinner together. They also went for a pretty long walk from people who were close to the situation, who have spoken to various outlets earlier in the day. That lasted about 2 hours. And
Right.
then went for dinner that night, where they shared a bunch of dishes. So sounds pretty romantic to me.
yeah.
I guess we'll see. Katy Perry is coming back in to Montreal tomorrow, and so hopefully by then maybe we'll get some more clarity.
Yeah, who knew Justin Trudeau had that much riz? That's what the kids say,
I
right?
know, it's crazy. It's crazy. It does feel like Love Island, as someone who was forced to watch that show by my high school friend.
Forced to watch it? You mean you love it? What are you saying? Don't lie to me,
Oh
Wyatt.
yeah, totally. Give
exactly.
her a shout out. Elise just wanted me to watch it.
Yeah. If you say so. Hey, Wyatt Sharpe, North American correspondent, go catch your flight, get some sleep. Thanks a lot for your company here on the Newswire.
Thank you.
You're listening to Newswire with Austin Pollock.
How old were you when you first voted? How did you feel? Were you a bit nervous, excited, or confused? Or was it totally underwhelming? Well, imagine the first time you voted was 16. It's a question that more and more people are asking, and it's also making headlines in the UK. They've allowed 16-year-olds to have their say in elections. So it begs the question, should we allow it here? Well, I, for one, would love a democracy sausage, and Helen Berents is a senior lecturer and political researcher at Griffith University, and she's been kind enough to join us here on the Newswire to unpack the topic. Helen, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
First things first, where has this proposal come from?
So, as you said, we're talking about it this week because the UK government, the Labour government in the UK, has announced that it is going to change the law so that 16-year-olds can vote. It comes around in democracies at various points. I'm sure we'll talk in a moment about its history in Australia, but in the UK, it's really come from a stated desire to increase voter engagement. The UK voting system is not compulsory, it's voluntary. You get to choose to vote. And so they're really trying to find ways to increase voter engagement in the UK. It was part of their manifesto they took to the last election, and they presented it as part of a move to restore trust in democracy and to future-proof the democracy of the UK.
Yeah, it's an important issue. As you touched on there, it's government interaction and how they've connected with people, especially in the UK, but also here at home. We've seen pretty low voter turnouts at recent elections. We've seen a lot of informal votes. Does the research show, and I mean, I've spoken to people at my school, right? Some of them think we have a president or Donald Trump is our prime minister somehow. But does the research show that 16-year-olds will actually be keen and engaged?
Yes, so there is research that shows that people under 18 would like to be formally engaged in the political system, of which voting is the kind of pinnacle of citizen engagement in democratic processes. It is interesting because one of the arguments is this, that 16-year-olds think Donald Trump is our president, is Australia's president, or these kind of comments. And my feeling on it, as well as other academics and advocates, will say that we can't just talk about lowering the voting age. We have to also talk about what civics education looks like, whether that's here in Australia or in the UK. And it's definitely something that's in the policy paper that the Labor government in the UK has put forward about the need to also ensure that this kind of conversation is happening and is well funded by the government, so that young people learn about the political system they're living in as well.
Yeah. A lot of young people get this information from social media. Six News was started, of course, on YouTube many, many years ago. We're seeing that 16-year-olds, or below 16-year-olds, I should say, won't have access to social media in the coming months and years ahead. Do you think this could impact the way that people are engaged? I mean, you spoke about their teaching it. Is that probably the only way that we're going to be able to get this engagement with politics?
It's a really interesting question that's facing Australia at the moment, with this conversation about banning under 16s from a variety of social media, including YouTube, right? Which, absolutely there are problems and concerns, that have been put forward to justify the ban. But Six News is a great example, right, of the ways in which these media can also provide that kind of information. And it's not just under 16s, right? We know that in the demographics, 18 to mid 20-year-olds get most of their content, their news content now from social media rather than traditional media outlets. So there is a shift in how we're learning and engaging with political debates in Australia, and that's reflected more globally as well. And so I think these two issues are absolutely connected and need kind of careful thought, right, if we're going to keep and grow young people's engagement in politics.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, pretty much everything that you're seeing, if you're watching us on YouTube at the moment, everything that you see in this room, I've learned from watching YouTube and social media, right? But I guess that is a whole nother issue, this whole this social media ban. But back to the voting thing here. What you spoke about it before. What are the main arguments from the UK about this? I mean, obviously it's about getting up engagement with the government. What are some other ones as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the arguments that we're hearing in the UK debate at the moment are quite similar to the arguments we hear whenever this conversation comes up. And interestingly, what we see are similar opposing arguments around the same core concepts. So Ian McAllister, who's a political scientist at the ANU, says that both sides talk about three things: equity, political participation, and maturity. So we're thinking in these terms of equity, that it's giving young people an equal opportunity. Young people at 16, you can pay tax, you can work full time, you can get your learners, you can give consent to have sex in some states, you can become a parent, you could give consent for medical procedures, you could express interest in serving in the military, right? And you could be charged as an adult for various criminal offences, but then you can't vote for the policy decisions that, influence those things that you can do in your life. The counter argument there is, well, the age of majority is still 18 for most things, and a lot of those things that I just listed, you still need some kind of parental or guardian approval to do, right? So that kind of tension. And then the political participation argument is around creating a habit for voting, for engaging politically. We know that even in Australia, that has a compulsory voting system, 18 to 24-year-olds at the last election had the lowest enrolment. So everyone is meant to be enrolled, but the estimate is that it was about 85%. So we're still missing 15% of them that haven't even enrolled to vote. And then the maturity argument. And again, that goes back and forwards all day, right?
Yeah.
That young people are mature enough, that they are engaged, that just because they're not joining political parties like perhaps their parents would have when they were that age doesn't mean that they're apathetic. And the argument against that they're still in development, they're still forming, they still have other important things to do in their life. Why add this burden to them, right?
Yeah.
So there's these interesting arguments back and forwards. And I would go back to the same point before, which is all of this has to recognize that we need increased civics engagement to equip young people to engage meaningfully.
Yeah. And I guess a lot of that maturity aspect of it sort of stems from, you see a lot of negative headlines in the mainstream media, like you turn on your nightly news and there's youth crime, catastrophe and all that sort of stuff. Does that play a bit into it in terms of what we're seeing in the argument that young people aren't mature?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that this is definitely one. It's the kind of news that we hear about young people. And so it's not just what young people think of themselves, but how society sees young people.
Yeah.
And the media, can play that role. If we talk about youth gangs, we talk about youth crime, we talk about, whatever these crises are that are framed to be the fault of young people, right? And they can do that because young people don't have a political voice to speak back against that, right? I'm thinking, I'm based in Queensland. We've just had the Liberals have won the last election, largely on a platform of being tough on youth crime. And I wonder how that would have played if 16-year-olds had been able to vote and have a say in that policy debate in the lead up to the election, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I'm in Queensland as well, and I can tell you that like a lot of people were talking about it at school. They were having their say. I will say Stephen Miles did resonate with a lot of voters because of a few of his social media videos, but unfortunately they couldn't vote. So it would have been really interesting to see, what 16-year-olds would have had to say. In terms of what we have in other countries and indeed in Australia, you mentioned it before. Is this sort of 16-year-old voting thing completely unheard of? Is this landmark in the UK?
In some ways, yes, but in some ways not at all. And in the UK itself, 16 and 17-year-olds can already vote in local elections in Wales and Scotland, and in the elections to the Senedd, that's the Welsh Parliament, and the Scottish Parliament.
Okay.
So this is just bringing the national vote in line with what's going on in two of the countries in the UK already. Beyond the UK, we see it Argentina, Brazil, so both of them in Latin America, 16-year-olds can vote. Closer to home, Indonesia and East Timor let 17-year-olds vote. There's examples in a bunch of places, and it has been a live conversation in Australia for quite a while. In 2008 was the Australia 2020 summit, the then Rudd government, and the youth delegates at that recommended that young people should be allowed to vote. So the conversation, it was happening before then, but it's been kind of in the formal discussions, for the last 15 years at least here as well.
Yeah, you definitely hear it all the time, and like people wanting to, it's all about, freedom of speech. It's all sort of stems from that as well. Is there any data that shows what sort of like political views that younger people have? Is there much data around that?
It's interesting because the data can be contradictory and it's also context dependent, so that can be difficult.
Yeah.
There is a belief and a that is held out by research that young people tend to vote more progressively, kind of for progressive politics or progressive parties, and historically that has shifted. The trend has moved. They've moved more conservative as they've aged. We're seeing increasingly that that's not necessarily true in the kind of context that we're living in now, when the promises that are made to young people that would lead them towards more conservative politics like home ownership and, retirement, reliable retirement, these kind of issues they're not things that they're achieving as they age, and so their politics aren't shifting. So it is a common argument, but if we look at the actual data, there hasn't actually been an impact, a fundamental change in the kind of election results in the countries that have let 16-year-olds vote.
Okay.
And even in the UK, I mean, it'll be 1.6 million more people who can vote, which sounds like a lot.
Yeah.
But actually 16 to 17-year-olds are only 3% of the population over 16 in the UK. So it's not going to wildly change. They're not adding 50% more people to the voting pool. So it's more about accountability, I think, to the constituency rather than some broad shift in voting trends.
Yeah. Is the general consensus over there that this is a good thing, or is the Conservatives, are they a bit off against it? Is there what's the
the
feeling
Conservatives
like?
don't like it.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there is a consensus, but there definitely is some pushback to it.
Yeah.
But there is a lot of support for it as well. And so, as always, that's the question, right? About who's in power and who can kind of make those kinds of decisions.
Yeah. And more broadly, is there a particular reason that there is such low engagement with the government? Like, is it because, and you're going off towards your minor parties and your independents, is there anything to show why this is happening?
I mean, the broad strokes answer is that the major parties aren't talking to those constituencies that are looking for other. They don't feel represented. They don't feel heard.
Yeah.
And we see that strategically. So the Greens, for example, introduced a bill in 2018 attempting to lower the voting age. That was Senator Jordan Steele John. And there was a lot of conversation, Greens talking directly to young people about how it would benefit them and why and things. And criticism that major parties, both Liberal and Labor in Australia, weren't doing that in the same way. I also think it's just the broader question of it's the chicken and egg question. Are the parties not talking to young people, or the young people opting out so the parties aren't engaging, right? And one of the arguments for the voting issue is that it gives people a concrete stake in those debates, right? It makes it not hypothetical, but real. The parties that have to think about what they're doing. Yeah.
There may be concerns that young people are too easily influenced or don't have an established political understanding. What would you say about that?
I would say that is probably true of any demographic. I don't think, like, when I turned 18, I didn't magically understand the parliamentary system of Australia any better than I did when I was 17, 363 days old. And so I think that it's often an argument that is used by those who have power to keep those who are asking for it out. This kind of question of maturity and comprehension was an argument that was being used about 50 years ago in Australia when they were campaigning to lower the vote from 21 to 18. It's an argument that's been used to when women were campaigning for the vote. It's an argument that's been used against racial minorities accessing the vote. This idea that people aren't clever enough, or they're not engaged enough, or they couldn't understand, or they don't understand. And we know that if you give any group of people the tools and knowledge and support to engage and understand, then they can choose to do that, right? And there's not when you go to vote in Australia, there's not a test. They don't ask you how much you know about Australian politics. They give you a piece of paper and a pencil, right? So this idea about competency and comprehension, I wouldn't, but you could flip it back on the general population who votes and says, do you know enough to vote?
Yeah, exactly. And it's often you see the keyboard warriors who probably have a bit of a, already preconceived idea about a few things that are happening, who are saying, 16-year-olds should never say. It's usually those people. But something our listeners and viewers are probably wondering is, could this happen here in Australia? Obviously, a key difference is the compulsory voting as well, as you mentioned there. Could you talk us through that?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I just said, we have lowered the voting age before in Australia. It is possible to lower the voting age. We did it in 1973, and that was an argument that came out of the post-war era. So 18-year-olds were old enough to fight and die for the country, but not to vote. So that was that move that moved it down to 18. And then, as I said, in 2018, the Green Senator Jordan Steele John introduced this bill The bill was referred to a joint committee inquiry to investigate it. And one of the things that came out of that was it was proposing that 16 and 17-year-olds should be enfranchised, allowed to vote, but it would be voluntary. And then when they turned 18, it would become compulsory. And the committee and expert advisors said that this would be a problem because in Australia we have compulsory voting and you can't create a two-tier voting system. If we're lowering the voting age, it should be compulsory from that age.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of was left hanging, right? The bill didn't progress, and it was kind of left as the problem. We've seen in the last week or so since this decision in the UK, the independent MP for Kooyong, Monique Ryan, has said that she'll introduce a private member's bill to lower it. And she's been aware of this issue of the question of what we do about 16, 17-year-olds as they learn how to be part of the system.
Yep.
And her proposal is to 16 or 17-year-olds could get fined if they don't vote, but then the Electoral Commission would waive the fine, right? So it would be compulsory, but there'd be discretion about the fine.
Yeah. Yep.
In Australia, it would add about 500,000 voters to the electoral roll to lower the voting age, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this conversation will kind of bubble along this year. And the fact that the UK, that has such an important big brother role or whatever for Australia and the shape of our democracy and the way we think about our democracy, the fact that they're moving to it, I think will be really interesting to see the moves that happen here. I would also say that there have been youth-led organisations, peak bodies across all the states and territories, Foundation for Young Australians, a whole lot of groups who have consistently been advocating and arguing for this.
Yeah.
And I also think it's one of the things that we see in the youth climate movements as well.
Yeah.
So that, how much more powerful would the school strikes for school strikes
versus the environment? Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I've
something
totally
like
blanked
that.
on the name of it. I was doing so well with all my names.
You're nearly there.
Those movements would be if they governments had to take them seriously as voters and not just as annoyances with posters, right? So those kind of questions and the stakes of what is at stake, right? The climate, the future, those kind of questions as well. So I can't see it going away here in Australia, whether it gets up or not.
No, it's certainly... Yeah, it's certainly a very interesting topic, Helen, and I do thank you a lot for your time. We'll leave it there. Helen Berents, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you a lot, everyone, for your company here on episode 4 of The Newswire. Don't forget, if you want to go back and listen to any of our other episodes, you can do that just by searching The Newswire on your podcast platform or on 6 News' YouTube channel. Just search at 6NewsAU as well. We're on there. Don't forget to send us your feedback. Email newswire@sixnewsau.com. If you want to have your say on any of the stories today, we'll even read it out on air if you would like. Thank you a lot for your company. Thanks a lot to our guests, Helen Berents and Wyatt Sharpe. We'll be back again with you next Wednesday. I'm Austin Pollock. Have a good week.
Do you wish you hadn't come? Oh no, gotta go, gotta run. May I remind you that you got nowhere to go.
This is a 6 News podcast.